Okay.
Hello, everybody. This is Gerald Celente, and what a day, what a day. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages. What a time we're at. I've been in this business for 45 years, trend forecasting. Never, ever in my life have I seen such a wild time. And World War III already began. We said when the Ukraine war began on February 24th, 2022. We went from COVID war to Ukraine war to World War. World War III is here, and now it's ramping up in front of everybody's eyes. We got El Presidente of the United States of America ramping it up with Israel and the Iran war. And this is very serious, very serious. And now, as you write in the Trends Journal, and your new edition's coming out soon, all the Europeans are ramping up their defense spending to fight those Russians. So we're in a serious time. And we have with us today, we're very, very honored. Nowhere, any place like this, what you're seeing right now, the people that are here. Because these are real men. Not these little ballless little guys like a Lindsey Graham. Not like a little clown boy like that the guy that's the Speaker of the House, what's his name?
Johnson.
Mike Johnson, a little boy of nothing. All these gutless little slime balls that love war and couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. And speaking of fighting their way out of a paper bag, how about Trump? Can't make a paper bag big enough for that blimp to fight out of. But boy, he wants war. And look what he's talking about now. Yep. Iran, yep. No ceasefire. So anyway, we have with us today Mr. Joe Lauria from Consortium News, another man of men, a real man for peace. Doesn't just talk about it, does everything he can. Former congressman, ran for president, Dennis Kucinich.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
And a guy that's a fighter of a fighter, Scott Ritter. He's been on the other side. He knows what slimy he is in the military, and that's why I became a different person. Oh, this is the guy that said there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when he was the UN inspector. Oh, and another draft dodger, Joe Biden, ridiculed him for saying that. And of course, we have with us Mr. Garland Nixon. You tell me all about Garland.
Garland Nixon is another man who's been on the other side. Former law enforcement, state of Maryland, and a longtime journalist, contributor, used to work for Fox News. And then I think he saw the light and went into the world of alternative media. And that's what we are today. We are, the good guys are on the side of alternative media. We're not prisoners of mainstream media. We're not beholden to any, corporate funding. We go out on our own and we fight the good fight by telling the truth. And I think everybody around this table is a truth teller.
Right.
Yeah. We live in a time when your truth is not the currency of the day. In fact, to tell the truth can get you in a lot of trouble. You can have 40 FBI agents visit your home.
Yeah.
You can have your passport seized, and you can have your websites taken down. Free speech isn't free. We pay a heavy price to practice free speech this day and age, but here we are doing it nonetheless. So welcome, Garland. Thanks, Gerald, for hosting this. Dennis, as usual, awesome. And Joe, I will get you an article sooner or later.
Okay.
I've just been busy.
I got you.
Yeah. Israel and Iran trade strikes on fifth day of conflict. That's how they write it in CNN. The president just met with his national security team as he weighs whether the U.S. should get involved in the conflict. What am I, 6 years old? What the hell are you talking about conflict? How about war? What's this conflict crap? Oh, you talked about the mainstream media? They're prostitutes. They're media whores that get paid to put out by their corporate pimps and government whoremasters. This is not a conflict. This is all-out war.
Unprovoked aggression too.
Unprovoked
Israel.
aggression.
It is, at the end of World War II, the Nuremberg Tribunal classified war of aggression
Worst crime.
as the greatest war crime possible, because from that, all other crimes emanate. What Israel did with the assistance and collusion of the United States of America, our own president, was to initiate a war of aggression against Iran. There's no justification. They haven't even tried. No Article 51 justification, no
Right.
going to the Security Council. They launched a Pearl Harbor type event as the United States was leading the Iranians to believe that there could be a negotiated settlement. The lead Iranian negotiator, Ali Shamkhani, 2 days before the strike, when he was told that Sunday's it, he said, "We're ready to sign a peace treaty that says no nuclear weapons. We're ready to limit enrichment to 3.75%. We're ready to do anything possible to get back on the path of peace." And Donald Trump gave the green light to Israel to attack Iran, and they killed Shamkhani. They killed his family. They attempted to decap. Ladies and gentlemen, I've never been more ashamed to be an American in my life. And you're talking to a man who lived through the whole Iraq debacle. This is
Another war of aggression.
another war of aggression, unprovoked, illegal war of aggression. But at least we pretended to go through the United Nations. Here, he's not even going to Congress. The president hasn't gone to Congress, and he's talking about getting us involved in a conflict that could go nuclear at any moment. I don't know. Dennis, you've been doing this your entire life.
I first of all, thank you. It's great to be with all of you. I led the effort against the war in Iraq. I organized 125 members to vote against it. And I wrote a paper that I distributed to members of Congress on October 2nd, 2002, which you can actually type in, go to the internet, type in Kucinich Iraq analysis 2002, before we started bombing in March of 2003. And I just, nailed the chapter and verse that Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction. There was no proof that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11 or Al-Qaeda's role in 9/11, that Iraq didn't have the intention or the capability of attacking the United States. It's very interesting to see the symmetry that exists between where we are now and where we were then. And the theme that runs through all the way is that they're lying about the intelligence. In this case, what they did with Iraq, they cooked the intelligence to fit the preconceived policy. Here, they threw aside the intelligence to pursue a preconceived policy. Tulsi Gabbard went before Congress in the spring as the director of national intelligence, who, by the way, is in charge of every intelligence agency in the government. And she testified that the national intelligence estimate, which is the annual estimate that comes out of the executive branch, that basically is a compilation of all of the work of all of the intelligence agencies. They said that Iran was not working on a nuclear weapon. Now, this is Tulsi Gabbard as director of national intelligence. What happened? Last night or early this morning, President Trump was asked by the media when he was flying back to Washington from Canada, what about Tulsi Gabbard, director of national intelligence? And they said, Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. His response was pretty startling. He said, I don't care what you said. I say that they have a weapon. Or no, I say that they're working on a weapon. And so his statements are incongruous for a president of the United States. I have never heard a president claim that he's going to assassinate the leader of Iran, which he said we can do it anytime, in a social media post, by God, and at the same time demand a unconditional surrender. Now, there isn't a war that we're told about that the U.S. is involved in at this moment, right? Yet he goes ahead and asks for an unconditional surrender for a war that hasn't even been declared or started as the U.S. is concerned. This is absurd. It is the theater of the absurd. And there is a psychopathology behind this, which really ought to be talked about, frankly. And I'm thinking that, you know, we could really be looking at the end of the United States
Yeah.
with what they're doing, how they're screwing around World War III. There's no thought given to this. I know where he gets his intelligence, and it isn't from his director of national intelligence. It's from Jerusalem and Bibi Netanyahu, who, by the way, finally, he appeared before my congressional committee in September of 2002. And I got a chance to question him. That's on the internet too. You look up Kucinich questions Netanyahu. And he said, you know, that he came there to testify in favor of the United States attacking
That's right.
Iraq. And I asked him a question. I said, who else would you attack? And of course, he said Iran, among other countries. Iran. I asked him afterwards, outside, after the committee meeting, you know, Mr. Netanyahu, why don't, if you believe in this, why don't you do it? And he said, no, we want you to do it. You know, the idea that and what he's done is to mousetrap Trump into a situation where it's quite possible that by the end of this podcast, we could see planes already over there dropping bombs. I did, but and it's illegal, it's immoral, and it is damaging to the United States national security interests.
You know, I think there's a discussion that also has to be had here regarding, you know, when you say Benjamin Netanyahu or Israel drew the United States into something. Donald Trump said something very telling today. He said, we control the skies over Tehran. Now, certainly, I would question whether or not Israel, you know, whether, you know, the veracity of that statement, even speaking for Israel. But what was very, very clear with the Donald Trump, and I would argue many people who hold the same ideological views as Donald Trump, don't see a delineation between Israel and the United States. Donald Trump committed under international law, there's a crime called perfidy. Right, if you're familiar with that, and I'll read it. The prohibition of perfidy, as defined, covers the killing, injuring, or capturing of an adversary by resort to acts inviting the confidence of an adversary to lead him to believe that he is entitled to or obliged to accord protection under the rules of international law applicable in armed conflict with the intent to betray that confidence. So, such as holding up a white flag, the person walks over there and you have a gun behind it and you shoot him. That's exactly what Donald Trump did. But what we can see, I think, from this is this particular act, the intelligence part of it had been going on for some months, most likely started during the Biden administration. Right. And I have little doubt that the Mossad had assistance from CIA, that I cannot believe that the Mossad did that Israel did that, and the United States had no involvement in it or no knowledge of it. Based on what Donald Trump has said recently, it seems pretty clear that while he was feigning a negotiation, he was actually doing exactly what this crime delineates, which is he was lulling his adversaries into a false sense of confidence so that could be taken advantage of for a strike. So saying that, and couple that with Donald Trump's we, I think that my perspective, everybody looks at it different. I think that the ruling elite of this country see Israel as either an extension of the U.S. empire or a proxy of the U.S. empire. And one last thing I'll say, you know, something is quite telling. If you look online, Haaretz had a lot of articles, there's another articles, and that is now the Israeli government is saying to even Americans, you can't leave. They're saying to people in Israel, it's in Haaretz, they are not allowed to leave. They have to stay. It's now being reported that a number of Israelis that have boats and yachts are trying to get on their boats and yachts and head for Cyprus to get out of there. So now the government's saying you can't leave. It's basically a detention camp even for the Israelis. And the first thought I thought of when I heard that was to the last Ukrainian. When you become a proxy for the empire, sooner or later, you become the cannon fodder. And now even the Israeli people are becoming the cannon fodder for the U.S. empire. And that's just an alternate perspective that I have. I don't think it's that far away, to be quite frank.
I know because the Republicans control both houses that it's pointless. But in the first term, I thought those were ridiculous impeachment attempts. But
yes, I agree.
Now we have legitimate crimes high crimes. He's backing a genocide, as Biden did. He should also be tried. And he's also wants to kick 2 million people, ethnically cleanse 2 million people, and build a golf course. I mean, the height of insanity here and criminality. And now he's done this, as Scott just explained, how through perfidy, as you say, he misled the Iranians. I mean, this guy needs to go down. Impeachment is totally should be done, but it won't, because they won't win.
You know, the thing to remember, and I think that you just hit on it, Garland, is that this is America acting as an empire, acting as though we're in a unipolar world. When the world has changed, it's changed dramatically. There are many different sorts of power in the world. And this is an attempt to nullify the power of other nations through military power, but through an adventure, let's call it, which is doomed to failure. There is no way that the American people are going to have their sons and daughters go and put their lives on the line for Israel and for the empire, because the only way that you would have any chance of taking down Iran is to invade it. It would take about 2 million soldiers to do that. It would be unlike anything America's ever seen before. And the casualties would be in the tens of thousands, if not more, deaths, that is, with hundreds of thousands injured. They'd have to have a draft. There's no way to do this without a draft. We only have 1.3 million service people, with another 800,000 that are reserves. And then, you know, the turmoil that's going to happen in this country, they're going to need more National Guard. He is opening up the gates of hell for America. And I just want to say that this didn't start with Trump. This goes over a period of decades. Democrat and Republican administrations have nurtured this this lion, as Netanyahu likes to represent himself now. They've nurtured it, and now it's about to eat us.
Who was the general who talked about the 7 countries?
Clark.
Wesley Clark.
Yeah, Iran was last on the list.
You know, you talk about casualties. If we've learned anything from what's going on in Ukraine, modern high-intensity combat chews human lives up at a pace that we haven't seen since for the United States since the Korean War. We lost a lot of guys in Korea. It was high intensity. But even Vietnam, it took a decade to lose 60,000 men. So we spread load that. We're potentially going up against a country that fought an 8-year war against Iraq, where they lost over 1 million people. The Iranians aren't going to roll over and play dead. They're not going to surrender. They're not going to wilt. They're not going to fold. These are people that understand what they're fighting for. They believe it. You know, if there was any hope of a domestic uprising against the theocracy, it's gone.
Yeah.
That they are rallying around their government. They are patriotic people, and they are prepared to sacrifice everything, not because they're suicidal, not because they want to be martyrs, but because they are proud of their country, they believe in their country, and they're willing to die for their country. I have to ask Americans today, how many of you are so proud of your country right now you're willing to give your lives for it? I mean, I look at this country and I see it split in half. I see half the people condemning Donald Trump. I see the other half the people condemning the Democrats. And we act as if we're 2 different countries. But we don't know how to take a hit. I mean, we've literally been on the couch for several decades, and we want to get in the ring with Mike Tyson at his prime. They will knock the living dog poop out of us. Yeah. We won't know what happened. If Donald Trump drops a bomb on Fordos tonight, the Iranians will level every single American base within striking distance. They will hit it with missiles that are accurate, deadly, and then what? The bodies come home. Are the American people ready for this? During World War II, we put Marines across the beach at Tarawa in 1943. We couldn't show the bodies. This is after the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor, but we couldn't show the bodies to the American people because they weren't ready to see American boys' bodies bobbing in the water. Are you ready to see American boys and girls' bodies torn apart by missiles coming home? They won't even be able to bring them home because the bodies will be in a war zone. You can't fly the C-17 in to recover it. Are we ready for this? And this will be a war that never ends.
No,
We're going to have to mobilize. We're going to have to do things. It's going to take months to mobilize, years to fight. We're not ready for this war.
Let me just mention something. First of all, you're a fighter, and I'm a fighter. I used to teach close combat. You only attack the attacker.
You should only attack.
No, I mean, we were taught you only attack the attacker.
Yeah, self-defense.
That's all it is. They weren't getting attacked.
No.
Number two, it's going to be a different kind of war. And when I had the book Trends 2000, which was an international bestseller, I was brought to Virginia Military Institute to talk about new millennium warfare. It's not going to be that kind of warfare anymore. It's going to be the beginning of the end of life on Earth. Look at the Chinese drones now. They have drones that carry 200 drones. This is going to be nuclear war. It's going to be the beginning of the end of life on Earth. There's not going to be soldiers fighting. This is insanity.
Gerald, you just talked about the nuclear dimension of this because, this is the president saying that they can't have a nuclear weapon, so we're going to bomb all their nuclear installations. Now, check this out. Radiation will be released. There's just no way to avoid it. The release of radiation is not just going to be contained to Iran. It can go into Afghanistan and other nearby.
It stops at the border.
That's exactly
It stops
right.
right at the border.
So this, we have a situation where the geopolitical implications of this, it's impossible that they have been accurately assessed because what we have right now is they're going, if the United States proceeds, as the president has hinted very broadly and stated in his social media post that they intend to, we're going into a situation basically in the blind.
Yeah, I know. This is serious.
For our soldiers.
And by the way, in the Trends Journal this week, one of the guys, I forgot his name, with the nuclear, whoever he is, said that when they bombed that Iranian place, exactly what happened. Nuclear explosions when they bombed, where they say they bombed the
Natanz.
Yeah, it's all going out into the air.
Well, 3 Mile, think of this for Americans. Think about 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
Okay. How we were lucky that there wasn't a meltdown, but you're pretty close to it. Think of Chernobyl. And we're creating this. And it's impossible to believe that the American people are going to want to send their sons and daughters into this kind of a morass.
They will. They will. You know why?
Ah,
There's going to be a false flag event. They're going to do something to make it
it's
happen.
too late for a false flag.
They'll make something happen. The Iranians attacked, blah, 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 blah. The Iranians did this. The Iranians did that. They're going to make up something. I believe they're going to do something. Look how 90% of the people swallow the crap coming out of that little clown boy, George W. Bush. We're going to get that guy Osama bin Laden dead or alive. 90% of the people follow him. 90%.
Well, it's a little bit different, though.
Well,
I'm
saying there's going to be a false flag.
Well, I'm not taking issue with the fact that they could try one, but you have to remember they were able to get away with going after Iran because of 9/11.
Yeah,
9/11 gave them the excuse,
Yeah.
even though it was phony because
Yep.
Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. So this is, if they're going to have a false flag, it's going to be a whopper.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't
So
put it
anyway,
past
that's
them.
one of the things that I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying those are the kind of things to look for.
Well, we know that the history of our involvement.
World War II, bombing of Pearl Harbor.
And
You guys do know that
Yeah.
attacking nuclear facilities is against law, against international law. It's a
Yeah.
war crime.
Yeah, but they're chosen.
Well, they were
No, no.
concerned about it.
We're
with
getting ready to do it.
Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
They
They were
already
very
did it.
concerned a few months ago.
IAEA was.
Yeah.
That's
Now
what I
all of a
thought
sudden
of.
they're not.
I'm saying the
No, they
American
are. They said
president
that they
is
should.
getting ready to
Yeah.
order the United States military to commit a war crime. And where is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to refuse this order? To say, I need the attorney general, I need my lawyers to say, what gives us the authority to violate international law? We are not supposed to be striking nuclear facilities. We are not at war with Iran. Congress hasn't authorized us to do anything, and we're getting ready to commit a war crime. I mean, I know, Gerald, all we do is commit war crimes. But again, nobody's even talking about this. What's that term used? Perfidy?
Perfect.
Well, that's what was it was England, the empire of England was called Perfidious Albion.
Yeah.
Because of the deceit and the treachery which characterized the empire and everything they said. And there was a point at which no one believed anything they said. And that was one of the reasons, for the revolution in the colonies. So, we're unleashing, America is unleashing forces here on behalf of Israel, on behalf of empire, that we don't, we can only guess here as to where this might go. And whatever we guess, it's quite likely to be much worse.
The other thing too, and this is sadly, horrifyingly, best case scenario, our economy collapses. That's the best case scenario is, boy, the only thing that happens is a collapsed economy. One of the things I've said is this, that let's just say we're fortunate and it doesn't go into some crazy nuclear and Holocaust and we're all done. And if that happens, there's no point in discussing that anyway, because there's no more discussion. But let's just say this proceeds, maintain course and speed. The Gulf of Straits of Hormuz closes down. The quite likely strikes on oil facilities in the region. And now people they wake up, a lot of Americans don't even know, they're not watching TV, they're busy. They're working 3 jobs in their defense. They're working 3 jobs to survive, saying, I'm just barely making it, not quite making it. And they wake up one day and there's something about a war. And I know people like this. There's something like a war. Did you hear something about a possible war? And they go to the gas station. And it's not $11 a gallon. It's not $12 a gallon. There's a sign, no gas. We'll let you know when there's some again. And when there is, get from the 70s. If you've got an even tag, you go on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If you got an odd tag, you go on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. If it's open, and then they go to the grocery store where everything comes by diesel fuel. The airlines have to buy aviation fuel; they can't afford it, and the air goes out of our economy, and there's no way to fix it. That could happen.
You're saying.
Go ahead.
What you said. It's a question.
Yeah,
It's not Higson. You're the Fox guy.
And it's not Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury.
Who's in that administration that could tell him this?
Nobody.
Tulsi, but she's being ignored.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
nobody
might I
does. He
add-
does what he wants.
might I add, and that will be their worst nightmare for this reason. The one thing that the people in power really fear the most, always, is internal uprising. People
She should
will
resign
tear.
right now.
Look what's going on now. People are so upset. I believe a lot of the things that's going on now, whether it's what people are in the streets, and a lot of that is a result of the anxiety that people have from struggling and things like that. It creates all this kind of stuff. But people will tear this country to pieces if their economy collapses and they don't know how they're going to make it.
Garland, to put a fine point on it, it's very likely that if we close off the Strait of Hormuz, that the price of oil will go up to $150, $200 a barrel. When people go to the pump on those off days that they're able to get a fill up, they could be paying $10 a gallon or more. And what that will do to a family budget, the fury that people are going to feel because their lives are being interrupted by this, and this is not about the America that they voted for, that they know whether they voted Democrat or Republican. And I think there's a real split that's happening here among the populace, if you'd call it that, those who are wrongly termed as isolationists, as though it's an epidemic. How about did somebody say America first? America first?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people went with that, America first. But if they would have said Israel before America, if they would have said empire first, I don't know that people would have gone along with that. And your point that you made about, which I think is really important, how will the American people respond to this? We saw, yes, in most wars, you can get people to, fall in line because there's a big lie that's told and people buy it for a while until their sons and daughters come back in body bags. But the almost 2,000 places around America this past weekend where people were saying, we don't want a king. I think that's like just a beginning
Yeah.
of it. It's, that this would happen just following that. People will organize, and we may see a challenge to the federal government that we have never seen in our lifetime. I mean, I grew up in an era where, when there were protests of the Vietnam War, when kids were, marching on Washington, there was campus unrest. What happened at Jackson State, Kent State, and other places. That could be nothing compared to what's about to happen if we unleash the forces of war against a country that, isn't trying to attack the United States, doesn't have the capability of doing that, isn't threatening us in any way, and where the threats have basically been cooked up and repeated every couple of years or more often. The drumbeat, they have weapons, they're going to get us. They have they're building a bomb. Netanyahu rode this into power, and the reason why I think, I wrote a column about this and posted on Substack yesterday. What I said is that, here's a guy who's facing criminal charges right now, and this is instrumental in him trying to stay out of jail.
Yeah.
That's- One of my lines is, when all else fails, they take you to war. And go back to when when Netanyahu got back into power in December 2022. In 2023, when he tried to pass the Judicial Reform Act, there were 39 weeks of protests. Not my language, but the language of Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel. He said, "We are in a civil war."
Yeah, but then he started a genocide, and 90% of Israelis go along with it.
That's what I'm trying to say. When all else fails, they take it to war. Because again, we only write the facts, and you mentioned, we subscribe to it. 3 days after the Hamas attack, it came out that the United States and Egypt had both warned Israel that they were going to be attacked. And then several weeks later, one after another, the information came out that they knew the attack was going to happen. They let the attack happen.
Yeah.
I tell everybody, I didn't know this. I do a podcast with Judge Napolitano every Wednesday. And we're doing one, and he's talked about Pearl Harbor. And he said how the United States cut off the oil going into Japan. So I look it up. I said, and it comes up, this is mainstream. You Google in Franklin Roosevelt seizes Japanese assets. In June of 1941, President Franklin Roosevelt seized all Japanese assets. You know why? Those dirty Japs invaded French Indochina. Wait a minute. Number one, I'm an American. And what the hell are the French doing in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos? And you're calling it French Indochina? We're stealing their rubber, their tin, rape, pillage, pilot. We could do anything we want. We're the Foreign Legion. We're in Algeria, we're Morocco. The Dutch and the English cut off 3/4 of Japanese trade, international trade, and 88% of their oil. They import 100%. Can't understand why they bombed Pearl Harbor. I haven't figured it out yet.
Oil embargo. But after
But it's more than the oil embargo. They stole their money. They cut off all their trade and cut off and criminalized them.
But after the war, Roosevelt did change his tune. He did not want those liberated Southeast Asian countries to go back to the French.
Yeah.
Truman did that. It's in the Pentagon Papers.
Yeah, well, this is the Franklin Roosevelt to put the Japanese in camps
But,
in America,
yeah.
along with
No, I
Italians.
understand. Well, we can start another. This thing about
The Italians,
about
I mean,
Well, we
Netanyahu,
deserve it.
the
Yeah.
thing about Netanyahu trying to set a jail, I'm absolutely true that that's part of it, but I think it's much bigger than that. This is.
Oh, he's always been wanting to
We're
do
talking
this.
about empire. This is overlapping empires. There is a
Yeah.
regional empire within the context of an American global empire. And they have, since Ben Gurion's days, in his diaries, as the great Ilan Pappé has told the Western world what the Palestinian viewpoint was, what really happened. In fact, it's written that this was the goal of Zionism.
Yep.
To take all of historic Palestine. The Likud party's charter says from the sea to the river, the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River. The thing was that it's kind of slowed down. This has been a gradual ethnic cleansing and genocide, really 48, obviously. The big one was 750,000 people were driven out of Palestine, never to return. and they will never come back again. And we never heard that story.
No.
We thought that there was nobody living there.
Yeah.
You see this typical settler colonial story. But by the mid 80s, when I first visited Palestine, things were kind of calm. You get on a bus to Jerusalem and drive to Jericho. It slowed down. Those maniacs, the Maya Kahane wing, were marginalized then. They were not part of the mainstream. They are in the cabinet now.
Yep.
They have accelerated in an outburst of the final thrust of the Ben Gurion, the dream of all of historic Palestine. And the United States is facilitating that. You had to think that maybe there would be a point where they wouldn't say, okay, you've gone too far. And Biden didn't say that. They allowed this genocide to go. And Trump, even worse, wanting to put a Mediterranean resort where people will be buried under rock. I mean, it's abominable. And I can't believe we're actually having this conversation. The things that we're saying.
His son-in-law,
It's
Jared
like a
Kushner, the year before, he said this is very valuable waterfront property. And he said, Jared Kushner, he said that the Palestinians should be moved into the Negev Desert. That's a year before, March.
That's right. He did say that.
You know, you were talking about Netanyahu when you were in Congress. He was the guy that sold us the Iraq War, right? He was the guy that went around.
Right, and around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
selling the Iraq War.
Absolutely.
He just changed one letter.
He was the first one.
This was an easy one. All of the things that they had written out, they just had to white out one little letter and just change it from a Q to an N. And
He was
same
correct.
thing.
He said it will transform the Middle East and forget rid of Saddam. And it did.
Yep.
He
Yeah.
made it a living
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
We got ISIS.
And
Yeah.
killed 1 million people,
Yeah,
by the way.
it transformed those people.
I mean, you see, the thing that concerns me and has concerned me during my 16 years in Congress, where, by the way, I gave, I think, of close to 150 speeches warning about going to war against Iraq, and another almost 350 speeches against the war in Iraq. The other one was going to war against Iran. Sorry. What concerns me is that we become so used to killing people.
Yeah.
All people want to do is live. I mean, you know, my wife was engaging in some, working in this little green area we have, and she commented as she was working with this one plant. She says, "Isn't that something? Everything wants to live."
Yeah.
And just think about how poignant that is when we think about how the people in Lebanon wanted to live, the people in Syria wanted to live, the people in Palestine and Gaza and West Bank want to live, the people in Iran want to live, people in Ukraine want to live, Russia. This force that drives us, this inconscient force towards death, towards worshiping of death, is something that we have to challenge as a cultural construct, as a consciousness that has somehow, like a virus, inhabited our body politic and got us to believe that war is okay, that it represents an extension of us.
But war is only okay if they die. See, your wife shows far more compassion to that plant than we do to Iranians, Iraqis, Palestinians, Libyans, anybody who isn't white like us. And I hate to say that, Garland, but we are a white supremacist nation. I mean, you know that as well as I do. This nation sucks when it comes, because we devalue human life. We treat it, and if you're not an American, your life isn't as valuable. We're willing to sacrifice your lives. We've seen that in Ukraine, where we've literally thrown them away by the millions.
It's not we, it's the politicians.
No, it's we, Gerald.
No,
I
it's
have to
not.
take exception. Every mother,
right.
you know what,
All right.
out there right now, who's not in the street demonstrating, is giving de
They don't
facto
know.
support. They don't know, but that's
They
because they
don't
don't
know.
want to know, Gerald.
No, it's not. You know, when I was a
They
kid,
have to know, Gerald.
when I was a kid, just
I'm not gonna excuse
from
it.
my aspect, when I was a kid and I started repeating what I heard on the media, my father said to me, may he rest in peace, Papagalo, parrot. He says, stop repeating what everybody else is saying. Think for yourself. And then when I started learning things, I realized I better not say something unless I had facts. And I said, Pop, I said, how come people don't care what's going on? How come? He says, son, take it easy. He said, people have little minds. I'm just telling you what he said. Now, and I'm going to bring the facts. You know, we're talking about this, but what happened to Taylor Swift last night? I mean, that's what the people know.
They know about the big Yankees batting average.
You got it.
So their brains fucking work.
And what I'm saying is, it's not that they support it, it's they don't know about it, and all they do is listen to the mainstream media. So when they get told what they're being told, they believe it.
If I see a cat get hit by a car, my heart will go out to that cat. An American turns on the TV and says a dead child in Gaza.
They don't show the dead
give.
child.
They do too. It's
They're
all
hardly-
over the place,
yeah.
Gerald.
Hold on a minute, hold on. Because, I mean,
Oh, boy.
I represented the people we're talking about. My career goes back 57 years, believe it or not. And I don't think, people are riveted to their own lives. They're
That's
just
right.
trying to make ends meet. They're trying to raise their kids in most cases. They're get them to school, have a job that pays enough to pay the rent or the mortgage. And,
So they're good Germans.
No, excuse me. No, what I'm saying is that it's really important to separate the people who, it's our job to help them understand the system. But you can't condemn the people and get them to accept your ability to guide them through the system. They're trying to just live, and they don't want to send their kids into this war. I can promise you that. And they generally want to live and let live. Are they propagandized? Sure. We're all propagandized one way or another by one thing or another. And then we have to, through our adult minds, figure out a way to sort it out. But I want to be very careful about condemning the American people by through the actions of their psychopathic leaders. It is, let's guide the people to a higher understanding of how the system works. And the system is a militarized system.
Yeah.
The system is dedicated to empire. It's dedicated to colonization. It's dedicated to slavery. It's dedicated to lowering the ability of people to be able to survive. It's dedicated to amassing wealth and putting it into the hands of a few. Let's change that. But let's call upon people like those millions of people who went out across America. Let's call upon them to stand up for the America of their ideals. It isn't the America we know. Oh my gosh, it isn't. But we still have to, look at those ideals of what America could be, even though we know at the same time what it is.
The 2024 election was over a year long. 154 Americans voted in that election.
Right.
I condemn every single one of them because they are politically engaged. Don't tell me that they don't have enough time to this. If they know what a Yankee batting average is, if they know what the cost of a car is, if they know anything that other than this, that means that they have made a decision to downplay it because they don't care about the lives of the Palestinians. They don't care about the lives of the Iranians. These are just numbers to them.
But that's some of them, but that's not all of America.
Well,
154 million.
Let me
Again,
so let me add something because, and I'll say this because in my extended family, right, I have people in my extended family, both family, extended family who are very, very well off. And then I have relatives who are in Baltimore in very poor neighborhoods who are struggling. And I can tell you this based on my experience of knowing people on that, very extremes. The more people are struggling and harder it is to make it, the less they are engaged
100%.
in a broad basis. So as a matter of fact, okay, there were in many states, in a number of states, 25% of Black males voted for Donald Trump. I know I've had people say this to me. Yeah, I don't like that one person I know that came from Jamaica. He called my country a crap hole country. I don't blah, blah, blah. I can't stand, didn't like him. So what do you think? I vote for Donald Trump. But it was, as Malcolm X said about the field slave, when you ask the field slave, do you want to run away? What the field slave say? Any place is better than here. So you had people who were struggling, who were suffering, who looked at what currently was going on and how things were deteriorating. And of course, Donald Trump was lying through his teeth. A lot of us knew that. Even some of us had a little bit of hope. Me, I was like, well, I didn't vote for Trump. I thought, well, maybe, I don't know. I'm hoping. In desperation. But people who were really struggling, a lot of them just said, man, I can barely, I go to the grocery store, $100 and I got a little bag this big. I heard people tell me these things. I don't care who he is. I don't care if he's a member of the Klan, I'm voting for this guy. So my point being that I'll end it with this. What we are doing right here is so important because there are so many people now with their phones or on their little computers. They look at Scott and I and you guys, you and whatever. They look at us on alternative media and they learn things. You know, I do another show on a WPFW, and it's a Pacific station. And I had people call who I had a guy call me one time and say, Garland, I apologize. Why? You were right. I was wrong. These people are crazy. They're a bunch of warmongers. But it is incumbent upon us, for whatever time we have, to continue to do this and to say, there are a lot of people that are victims of propaganda. And if we try to look at it like that and say, as best we can, maybe we can, through alternative media, teach them a little something, help them. Maybe some of them are making bad decisions. Maybe some of them are wrong. But maybe if we kind of give them some info, maybe we can change some minds. So I think a positive attitude is what we're doing right now is what we can do. And I think it's important that we continue this work.
That's why what Scott has organized and you to have this citizens summit tomorrow is so vital.
Yes.
Because you see in any conflict, there are two separate worlds that collide.
Yep.
Russia and the West, the Iranians, Hezbollah, Palestinians, and Israel, totally different visions of what's happening. Both sides accuse each other of being the aggressor. And I think the Russian side knows more about what the West is saying than we know about in this country about what Russia is saying. Same with the Israelis. The American people know exactly that Israel is a victim, that Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, they are attacking Israel. They have to defend themselves. Why we keep hearing that? We never hear their point of view. We never hear the other side. That's kept out of the media. That I worked 25 years in the mainstream media, big newspapers like the Wall Street Journal and and I know how it works because I did it. There were things I put in there that were taken out repeatedly. Those things like the Palestinian, when the Palestinians were going for General Assembly, I was a UN correspondent for 25 years. When the Palestinians were going for observer state status, I kept writing in the journal articles that 140 countries recognized Palestine. They kept just cutting that out until the day of the vote when they realized it was 150 countries that voted.
So you were wrong.
They had to report it that day. But I think the idea of having both sides, these two worlds that are so separate, and they can't back down. The French, the German leaders, the British army, they cannot back down from the stake that they put into the Ukraine war, for example. And they continuously believe that obviously Russia is the aggressor. It was so obvious, but except if you look into what happened, it was a setup. There's no question that they were provoked into that in order to launch an economic ground proxy war and a information war. And the information wars worked only in the US and in Europe, basically. But people don't have the other side of the story. And that's what Scott's going to try to do. And we're going to do tomorrow.
Well, we're not trying to do the other side of the story. Tell you the truth, what we're trying to do is humanize the Russians. Tomorrow's not a policy debate.
But the Americans are going to learn what Russians think.
They're going to learn that the Russians are like us.
Yeah.
Because what happens now is you go to the movies, and the Russian is a very bad man. He's a crazy man who drinks vodka.
That primitive level
and the women are beautiful, but they are stupid, and they believe they're dictator and they don't do anything right. And what you're going to learn tomorrow is that the Russians are human beings like us, extraordinarily cultured human beings. And what I hope people get out of tomorrow is that the Russians value human life just like we value human life, and that we should cherish the Russian lives. Yeah. Right, but we don't do this to the Palestinians, the Iranians. Tomorrow is.
But it would be good if we heard their point of view about what Ukraine is about. That they saw a threat.
But they're not. I don't know if we're even.
Russia is not a threat to the U.S. or to
that's the point we're going to make. Is the
but,
Russians not a threat?
NATO was a threat to Russia, and I just hope that can be explained a little bit.
Well, we'll see what happens. The dialogue. You can ask the question, but what I'm trying to do is create a dialogue between Americans and Russians that humanize the people. Teach our government how to interact with people responsibly, like humans, etc. So that when we talk about decisions like sanctions, etc., we maybe want to think, do we want to be sanctioned like that? What would happen if that happened to us? To do what John F. Kennedy demanded of us in 1963, to put ourselves in their shoes and see this from their perspective.
Yeah, why don't we know about them? Because that's not in the newspaper. We never hear the Palestinian
No.
point of view, the Russian point of view. And that's why it's easy to just say, well, we're killing people we don't even know. But if
So that's
we
going
knew
to be
them-
tomorrow
if
at
people
2
knew them,
p.m.
it'd be harder to kill them.
Tomorrow, 2 p.m.
Yes.
That's going to be Eastern time.
If I may just, I'll tell a quick story from law enforcement on Scott's boat. The difference between people, and again, people who don't know things and you think bad of them. When I was in law enforcement, I was told to go work with it. This was in the 80s, and I was fresh out of academy. Said, you're going to work with this guy. And a bunch of the white officers says, oh, it's terrible. That guy's a racist. It's not going to work out. He doesn't like black people, right? And I'm like, well, whatever, I work here. I'm going to go to that duty assignment. And I went there and I worked with him for like a couple of years, and we became very good friends. And then after me, another black officer came with him, and they became the best of friends, bowling together, baseball games together. They were like brothers. His word was, yeah, we're like two peas in a pod. He literally said that. And actually what I realized over the course of time was this: he just never been around any black people. And so he supposedly didn't like the black people. He had an image of what black people were. And he didn't like the image, the archetype he had of what a black person was. And when he got around black people, he realized, oh crap, they're just like everybody else. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are happy, some of them are sad. My point being, that's all you really, and that's what's happening tomorrow with Scott getting this people. All of the Russians on TV are always members of the organized crime. They're always an organized crime leader. You ever notice that? Every Hollywood movie. But the bottom line is,
Well, they might be, Garland. We never know.
Exactly. But the bottom line is exactly what Scott's saying. Sometimes if you just get to know somebody, or you just work with somebody and you realize, oh crap, they're just regular people. And I've seen it with my own eyes. That's why I said, I believe those kinds of things, you can talk to people, and they won't hear you. But when they see things like that, their own brain says, well, I'm just looking at a regular old person. And I think what you're doing, Scott, and what we'll be doing tomorrow is very important. That's
The thing that frustrates me is that what tomorrow is envisioned about building upon a dialogue that was existing for the first time in many years between the United States government and the Russians.
Yeah.
The Trump administration had entered into this dialogue, and they were talking about normalizing relations. But yesterday, Trump stopped the dialogue. He stopped the
Yes, he
dialogue.
did.
So tomorrow becomes even more important, because now we're not just acting in concert with a policy direction. We are swimming against the stream, trying to teach people and show people that this is the right path. We have to teach them so that they can hold the government accountable for what it does in their names. We need to be speaking to the Russian people across every spectrum of what we do in life. And our government has quit on us at a most crucial time. So what is happening tomorrow, this initiation of a citizen summit, the initiation of dialogue between American people and Russian people, this is very important. It's an important precedent to be set.
Scott, I remember when Ted Koppel sponsored the discussions over television between people in Russia and people in the United States, maybe 40 years ago.
You mean Phil Donahue?
Well, maybe Phil did one too, but I'm pretty sure that Koppel did the same.
Yeah, I remember.
At any rate, there was this moment of recognition. And when people heard from each other and identified each other, they saw the commonalities. And this is one of the big lessons that I think we all have in life about how much people are alike. When we're growing up, and if you live in a certain neighborhood for quite a while and you go to a school, you think that kids from other schools are so different. You go to high school, right? You go to high school and you're on a team and you're going to play against another team and they must have horns or something. I mean, that's the level of thinking. But as you grow and you get around the city, you find that people in the city that you live in are pretty much the same. I mean, my family lived in 21 different places by the time I was 17. So I had a chance to travel around the city and see the commonalities. Then all of us who have traveled the world, as you travel the world, you start to see people are alike. They may have different languages, their customs might be different, but we're all made of the same thing, the human genome theory. So we're 99.9% all made of the same thing. That and in this technologically advanced society, we're interdependent, we're interconnected. And I think the real truth of our existence, which makes this war and all war is such a tragedy is that human unity is what we strive for, to connect with each other, to unite as human beings. And yet it is the politics, it's the economics, it's devices that are used to set people apart, to play them off against each other as a matter of self-aggrandizement, as a matter of political achievement. And, you know, that what we really have to do is to shift the consciousness of our country. And I hope that it doesn't take America getting wrecked by this war, you know, if it goes through in Iran, which would just be so destructive for our country. I hope there's other ways that we can get to this realization of the fact that, you know, all people just want to live, they want to survive. And when one person attributes to themselves such power as to be able to point a finger and say, I'm going to kill that person, I'm going to kill those people, I'm going to destroy that country, that person does not deserve to be the leader of our nation.
No. You know, talking about the people,
100%.
if you do not take an interest in the affairs of your government, then you are doomed to live under the rule of fools. Plato.
Yeah.
So this stuff's been going on a long time.
Yeah, that's right. But how do we elevate
I
the
mean,
human?
here it is.
Right.
It's the rule of fools.
I don't think he's going to do it. I don't think he's going to get the U.S. directly involved.
What, is anything new on the
The
news
rumor, the
coming out?
rumor from his, that there's significant pushback within his national security team. But the Pentagon has probably given the same advice that they gave when he was trying to bomb Iran last time, which is
He's
you're going to start something you can't finish.
trying to use Israel's attack as a way to get them to
This is-
capitulate on the negotiating table.
Just,
Thing
I
can get out of hand.
just want to say real quick for people tomorrow, if you're tuning in, we're going to be live streaming on YouTube. It's going to be on Gerald Celente's channel. That's YouTube at, is it Celente? Is it G Celente?
Yeah,
or
just
Celente?
Celente.
Celente, that's Celente. And tune in, watch it. We'll be broadcasting again, but anybody watching, we'll be putting it out on
Yeah,
that.
just put Celente
Sorry.
on YouTube and it comes right up. The other one, Gallant, the former defense minister of Israel, who said that the Palestinians were human animals and we could kill them. He came out and said that the United States has an obligation to assist Israel's operation in Iran.
An obligation.
An obligation, we're obligated.
Yeah.
This clown boy,
Is indicted by the ICC.
Right.
War criminal,
yeah.
that a war criminal.
this little clown, this little piece of scum saying we're obligated? Who the hell are you to say that?
They keep getting away with it.
I know, that's what I'm trying to
They've had
say.
impunity
People
for
are giving us
decades. That's why they could openly make genocidal statements of intent.
I know.
Followed up by acts of genocide, which is a textbook case where they make, if you look at the Genocide Convention, in whole or in part, they're making the conditions of life impossible. They said they'd do that. They're doing it. It's according to the text of the Genocide Convention. There's no doubt. What is the ICJ doing?
Well, the
Why
other-
are they waiting so long?
Well,
Because everyone's waiting for that court, a few judges to say what everybody, the whole world knows.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that's important here is that I've read of several instances. I don't know how true it is that the Taliban said if the U.S. gets involved, they'll declare war on the U.S. and Israel. Pakistan, which is
That's
the nuclear.
Yeah.
I think because Pakistan is in fact a military dictatorship, and the military runs everything. But I believe that what's going on in Pakistan, because they're making a lot of noises, there's a fear that the people, that there could be an uprising. I would argue that if this thing happens, there's a likelihood that some of these Gulf monarchies could fall. That these Gulf monarchies, you've got some of these Gulf monarchies where literally 98% of the people are in favor of their government supporting the Palestinians, and the government doesn't. That is not sustainable. So you can create in very quickly. This action could redraw all of the borders throughout the union. I mean, you are, as you said, as you said, former Congressman Kucinich, they're opening a Pandora's box. Yeah. In the Middle East, a place that the Brits have gone in there and drawn lines all over the place, across tribal lines. The Kurds, they are all over here. These people were here, and the Pashtuns. And you wake up one day and these people say, we don't like the way things are. We don't like that guy running us. I think we'll cut his head off, and then everything is done. I mean,
Pandora lives in a tinderbox.
But let me tell you
That's
let me tell you what's going to happen to Pandora here, what she's going to consume, because you're looking at the small fries. First of all, let's just be straight up what's happening here. The president is not listening to his director of national intelligence. He was ratified by the United States Senate. This is part of our constitutional due process. She is constitutionally mandated and obligated to be the sole point of intelligence information passed to the president. She is responsible for delivering the presidential daily brief. So when he says, I don't listen to her, who is he listening to?
Himself.
Is there a secret? No, it's the Israelis.
Yeah.
The Israelis, and that's a crime. That is a crime, high crime and misdemeanor. A foreign government is now giving intelligence about how a country goes to war. But here's the thing. Why are they doing this? Israel is being beat. I just want everybody to understand this. Israel is losing this war. And if this war continues unabated in this direction, Israel will collapse. It is physically being wiped off the face of the earth
How
as
do
we
we
speak.
know this, though?
Yeah.
The Israelis are hiding information about the attack. We know very
that's
little.
pretty clear.
We know this because we see it. There's physical evidence of this
But
manifesting.
the Haifa
Well, the
refinery,
United States is saying
Prior
they
to
control,
Big
they
have they
control
hit
the
any
air.
command and control, intelligence
Yes,
headquarters?
yes.
They just did it today.
did a
They
big
hit
one.
4 intelligence sites.
Yeah.
Right now, as we speak, Iran's getting ready to
Oh,
launch the
there's not a train
Kyber
coming
missile,
here.
which is a 2,000-pound warhead, and what it hit is gone. They're going to fundamentally change. The bottom line is Israel can't sustain this. Look, let's just look at math.
It's only 5 days.
Yeah, they're
Israel
running
can't
out of
take 15
interceptor
days.
missiles. They don't have enough
Yeah.
missiles.
Yep.
It's not just Israel running out. We're running out of THAAD missiles. We're running out of SM-3s, SM-6s. We don't have any. You know how many SM-3 missiles we make in a year? 73. And we've already expended an annual production rate. And we're talking about going to war with Taiwan, where the Chinese are going to flood the gate. We've already given away everything to Ukraine. We can't sustain. Israel is in a state of panic. That's why they're saying we have an obligation, because this isn't about an obligation to go into Lebanon or an obligation to go into Gaza. This is an obligation to save Israel from the mistake Israel has made. But here's the other thing that's going to go down. This president is going to go down.
Yeah.
This president is going to go down hard.
He's number one. He comes before Marion Adelson.
But
and
he
before
will. But his
Netanyahu,
reputation is shot.
right?
He was elected because 3 people jumped over: RFK Jr.,
Yeah,
Tulsi Gabbard, and Elon Musk.
yeah.
And he has betrayed Elon Musk. He's in the process. So he's been betraying RFK Jr. by minimizing his
Well-
impact. But he's now turned on Tulsi Gabbard. The people who voted for this man, because he said, I am a person of peace, I am going to pursue peace, etc. That is a significant part of the MAGA movement. And he's ready, he's about to betray them. This president is toast,
He
and
won't.
the MAGA movement
If
is
he's
toast.
going to go down, he will not do this. He comes before Netanyahu.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
here, here's what Trump said, by the way,
Anything we know
today.
about Trump.
He said, we now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran.
We've been talking a lot about pronouns.
This is
we.
we.
Who's
Well,
we?
yeah, he's the king.
They,
He goes, Tehran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment, and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived and manufactured stuff. Yep, that's what Trump is saying.
Adolescence.
And he's saying that simply stated, Iran, blah, blah, blah. And he said he wants unconditional surrender.
So I think the point that we need to make for the people who are watching is that the President of the United States, as was just said here by Scott, he has a cabinet, they advise him. He has not taken the advice of his the Director of National Security. He has an obligation to do that. He cannot speak for another country. He cannot be influenced by another country in his decision-making, but that appears to be happening. And if he decides to go forward, he is not, to my knowledge, he hasn't taken any resolution to Congress. I have to say, though, that given AIPAC's influence on the Congress,
Yeah.
he may be able to get approval. He may. The Senate, I don't know, but he may be able to get approval. But he doesn't even contemplate the legislative branch, except with the so-called big beautiful bill, which is still tied up. One must keep in mind that the sharp increase in spending that went to the Pentagon in this new bill, it could very well be that that was put in there for this war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that's
yeah.
that's why they plussed it up by 20% or so. So, you know, we have to, the people here need to know that the President of the United States doesn't have the ability by law to take this country into a state of war without going to Congress, that he doesn't have the ability to be able to make decisions based on the needs of other countries before he decides what's right for America. And if he's doing that, I think the American people are going to be in the streets, and they're going to be protesting in ways that he's never seen before.
But every president since World War II, they've taken us to war without approval of Congress, right?
Okay, but you know, as we've talked about earlier in the show, there was always some pretext.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
Yeah,
they
but the
do,
people-
they're dictators anyway. The other ones
Well,
took us to
you know,
wars
look,
without
look, what you're
Congress.
saying is that you're talking about the empire working its will or its way, consciously or not, through the various people who happen to be in the Oval Office, and that the American people are continually snookered by this process. They give up their tax dollars.
Yep.
Sometimes they give up their sons and daughters. We all believe in America to a point, but it's like after a while, people fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I think that the American people are not going to tolerate this a use of aggressive power against Iran, and they're not going to. I've said it a couple times here. They do not want to send their sons and daughters.
No, they won't send their sons and daughters,
But you can't. But this war is impossible if the idea is to regime change, which is the fantasy.
yeah, what
There.
regime? Yeah, we
Yeah.
put the shot back in
I mean,
his kid.
if the idea is regime change, that's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen. It is a fantasy, and it's a fantasy that could cost the men and women who serve this country tens of thousands of them their lives.
If only we had your Department of Peace.
Well, the idea was that there ought to be a function where you try to have the government structured to avoid war, to actually use what's called diplomacy. We can look it up and
But Scott, you should have told the judge that even these 30,000-pound bunker busters will not be able to get.
We already dropped two of them on the Houthi.
Well, yeah, but to get into the mountain where the centrifuge.
I'm trying to tell you right
The New
now,
York Times reported saying that they have to make a hole and then keep dropping them in a wave of them into that hole to keep boring down on it.
may not
It's
work,
insanity.
the physics of it.
Somebody's got to explain that to
But
Mr.
what
Trump,
I'm-
some general.
The
It can't be
general
done.
should have already said,
Can't be
Mr. President,
done.
we already did this. In November, we sent two
Yeah.
B-2 bombers with this big bomb over Yemen because we're going to blow up one of the Houthi underground sites.
Yeah.
And we dropped the two bombs on them and they went poof and nothing happened. That thing that they were talking about, Ferdos, is 95 meters underground. That bomb you
Solid
have
rock.
doesn't even touch it. And this is rock. It's not going through soil
Yeah, I
and
know.
concrete.
Yeah,
Rock.
keep
You can
dropping
keep
bombs
doing
in.
it and it's just going to go. It's like hitting caps on the sidewalk. I don't care how many rolls of caps you put there and bang it. You ain't making a dent in the sidewalk.
So you should talk to Lindsey Graham because he said that the headline tonight is "We're moving into the land of force." If we need to provide bombs to Israel, provide bombs. If we need to fly planes with Israel, do joint operations. Wouldn't the world be better off if the Ayatollahs went away and replaced by something better? Look at the stupid crap spewing out of this moron's
Well,
mouth.
But this
And
is
he's quoted all the time.
This is treason. This is the point I want to make. We can criticize George W. Bush all the time, as we do, but he went to Congress and he went to the United Nations. It may have been with false premise, but you can
Yeah,
make a
but he didn't
face.
get the resolution
It
with the war
doesn't
anyway.
matter.
With the war
He
anyway.
initiated,
Yeah,
and
but
then they
he
had lawyers say, well, the resolution can be interpreted in different
Yeah.
ways. This
Yeah,
president's
but
not
there-
even making that effort. He's going to war based upon intelligence directly provided to him by the Israelis, based upon direction given to him by the Israelis.
Colin Powell in his vile
This is
display was a
treason.
vile display.
This
that he
is
made.
treason.
Yeah, but it's.
But why
yeah,
are we diminishing this?
Yeah,
This is fucking treason.
No, but what Bush did too
Say it-
is
say it
treason. He
again.
just
Nobody
did it
heard
in a different way. That's
No,
all.
it's not.
Yes,
There is
it
due
is.
process and
Oh,
there's
it's
fucking
bullshit.
treason.
Bullshit.
This is why we'll never, ever hold a president to account.
It-
This is fucking treason.
and it
Do
was-
something about
It
it.
was treason with
No, it
Bush.
wasn't.
Yes, it
No, it
was. It
wasn't.
was bullshit.
He went to Congress, they went
Oh,
to the
he went to
UN.
Congress and went to the UN and did what the fuck he wanted to do.
That's due process. That's
Yo,
how
due
the-
process. I'll do what I want to do. I'm the president.
He violated the UN charter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this,
No,
you know,
a lawyer will say he didn't
A
violate. the
lawyer.
Right.
What, some scumbag shithead that swallows crap that gets paid off to do it?
That doesn't matter. I'm talking treason.
doesn't
He's not
matter.
even making the effort.
It's the same. It's a
And- and-
different
the same.
game.
and let me
It's
add
not the
this.
same. One is
you know,
treason.
It's
we're
both
talking about laws, right? Which you're right, Scott.
I know I'm right.
But
It doesn't matter. It's not a fucking question.
yeah, I agree. You're
It's
100%.
fucking treason. He's working
Yeah.
for the Israelis to send us to war. And what the fuck are the American people doing about it? Not a
Yeah.
goddamn thing.
Where are the billionaires? Huh? What are you
I don't
talking
know.
about the American people for?
Because
Where are the
we-
rest of them? No, where are the rest of them? What are you talking
the
about the people for?
Constitution is we the fucking people,
No,
not
no,
we
no,
the
no.
billionaires.
Shove it, man.
Shove it.
Yeah.
Shove the
No,
Constitution.
no.
Fuck you.
No. Shove the crap about the American people.
Fuck it. They're in charge. We the fucking people.
You're not in charge. The billionaires are
No,
in
you
charge.
surrendered to them.
They're in charge.
Oh,
Now,
Gerald, no.
you went on. Let me go on. Where are the billionaires? Where are the billionaires say, where are the Bezos? Where are the Buffetts? Where are the Gates? Where are the Zuckerbergs? Where are the Musks? Where are them saying, we need peace? And as a billionaire, I'm going to do everything I can to give peace on earth.
7 votes. You just counted 7 votes. 154 million people.
No.
voted in the last
They
election. You
can
just
make the
counted 7.
change, as Garland was saying, as Dennis was saying, the people that he knew when he was in office, the people are hungry. They don't know this stuff. They can only do so much. They don't have the knowledge and strength to do that. Where are the billionaires? They could change the game like that. They could change the game like that. They could change the game like that.
Here's something else that's important too, because that's look, for Scott's right. When you say this person's violating the law, you know, law enforcement, that's all you learn. It's either legal or it's not, right? But here's the thing. When you look at people who have total disregard for all laws, international law, you know what I mean? They'll attack country. They literally, in 91, what happened? They didn't have a high enough percentage of people to go into the whole Iraq Kuwait thing. So what did they do? They went to a PR firm and cooked up a lie about babies being thrown out of
Yeah.
incubators.
Yeah.
Went to Congress with an actress basically
Yeah.
to lie.
She's the daughter of the.
The daughter of the ambassador.
Okay, now.
Yeah.
Now, so they did it. Okay, all a lie, a cooked up act. Afterwards, members of Congress and everyone in the United States knew they did it and still did nothing. It was
That's
incumbent
right.
upon Congress members
Yeah.
to say, whoa, time out. You got to go to jail for that. They did nothing. So while the law is on the books, we know that our members of Congress, at this point, Congress has abdicated their constitutional responsibilities for oversight of the intelligence communities. Forget that. Need I get into Russiagate and all manner of things. No oversight whatsoever for the intelligence communities. No oversight whatsoever for the executive branch. So we're talking about a dysfunctional government that
You got
where
it.
the people do not that
That's
are
it.
supposed to represent us by keeping their constitutional responsibilities. None of them did it. Are doing it from the top to the bottom.
Okay,
Go ahead, Dennis.
okay, Garland, I want to keep bringing this home.
Okay.
The Pentagon budget is approaching $1 trillion annually, okay? The quality of education is declining. Many people don't have access, can't afford decent health care, either because the insurance costs too much, they can't get the coverage they need. You have people involved in medical bankruptcies. You have more people now renting than I think ever before. Home ownership used to be the hallmark of the American dream.
Yep.
Yet People are finding they can't afford to stay in their homes. They rent. The rents are sometimes higher than their mortgage payments.
Yeah.
There's a point at which the tension builds up. You talked about tension before. There's a point at which the tension builds up and people start saying, hey, what are you doing for me? How does this relate to my practical aspirations? To have a safe neighborhood, to have affordable transportation, to be able to afford my car and to put gas in it, to send my kids to school, and all the other things that are part and parcel of life. When the government starts to ignore that, and that's exactly what's happening right now. It is ignoring it in favor of this militarization. The time will come. It will come. Could come this summer. The time will come where people say, no, I'm not going along with this. And, we know that we have had a series of presidents who've broken the law. No question about it. I introduced about 47 articles of impeachment against President Bush. One of the Democratic leaders stood up and referred it to committee. Democratic leader. And it included the fact that, we were lied to take us into war. I put articles of impeachment against Cheney. When the people have to know the truth. We're told, the Bible says, the truth shall set you free. Sometimes there's a time lag. Sometimes the time lag is pretty long. But what people experience in their daily lives informs them mightily as to whether government actually works. And that's something you can't fake. And there is faking going on right now, but it's not going to last forever.
When you mentioned the time is running out. In the Gulf War, I had the honor and pleasure and to be deployed to a base where Joint Special Operations were operating out of. And one of the units that was there was a Ranger company. Now, I'm a Marine. We don't have too much love lost for the Rangers. We make fun of them all the time. But this is in wartime, and they're marching to PT. They are marching in good order. They are in step. They are locked up. They are looking good. Rangers know how to march.
Yeah.
All right. I looked at this ridiculous parade that took place, and I looked at the people marching in front of the stand. And the first off, I was like, what scumbags, what bag. But then I talked to someone. I said, these guys know how to march. They said, oh, they know how to march. They ambled in front of a man they just respect so much. This is fiction that the military loves this president.
Yeah.
The military despises this president. Hegseth is a propagandist selling crap about new patriotism, all that. The military professionals look at this man and they say, and the proof was when they had the chance to walk in front of him and strut their stuff.
It was ugly.
They went straight to rag bag mode because they said, we don't respect you. They should have put their hands in their pockets because that was a display of open disrespect. This president is losing the country.
Did he understand that?
I don't think
No.
he understands anything.
But that goes back to what everything you just said. He doesn't understand anything. And so that's why have a discussion on who says what to him?
You hear what
He
he says
doesn't
about,
understand
you hear what he
anything.
says about Gaza, that they're dying from stabbings and knifings
Yes, I
and
mean-
muggings. The guy is a developer from Queens, and I grew up in the Bronx, as you did, and he thinks that Gaza is the South Bronx, that they're dying of muggings. All you have to do is clear all the rubble out and redevelop it.
Yeah.
Of course, they're not coming back.
You know what's
But
amazing
that's
about
what
the
he
Iranian
thinks. He's
people?
a moron.
The Iranian people, even as they're being bombed every day, even as they're suffering, losing scores of their own women and own children, every day the Iranian people talk about the people of Gaza. They talk about the Palestinian people. They talk because, their constitution requires them to defend the state of Palestine. They're Shia and they're defending a Palestinian state because it's the
Yeah, more
right
than
thing to
Sunni
do.
monarchs.
You want to talk about human beings?
Yeah.
As they are being attacked, as they are being slaughtered themselves, every day, the first thing they talk about is the people of Gaza and how to bring peace to Gaza. The Iranians are amazing human beings. amazing human beings. And that's a standard I'd like to see us take, where we wake up in the morning and say, what are we going to do to help the people of Gaza? What are we going to do to help the people of the Congo, where they have children who are mining cobalt by hand so we can all have these fancy phones? What are we going to do about all these people who are suffering around the world, the people of South Sudan, the people everywhere, Ukraine even? Instead of sending more arms, why don't we work about bringing about it into the fighting so that we can rebuild? Guys, this is what I want from the American people. I want you to reach into your heart as human beings and treat the world as you treat your neighbor, as you treat yourself, as your family. Learn to love people, but you can only love them if you recognize them as human beings. You have to recognize them as human beings.
I think.
Well, that's a spiritual principle, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yeah.
Except that today it's been turned on its head to do unto others before they do unto you. And that then leaves people to conjure enemies and to
Again,
fulminate wars
Yeah.
and to invite calamity.
again, that gives me the right to kill anybody that I want because I think they were going to kill me.
Well, and
Right? That's what they're doing. We attacked Iran because they were going to develop a nuclear bomb. Okay, so number one, you got a nuclear bomb. Why can't they have one? No, you can't talk about that. Okay. But okay, so you said you attacked them because they were going to make a nuclear bomb. That's no reason to attack somebody. They didn't threaten to attack you. But they're doing it. Again, you only attack the attacker. There's no right. I could kill anybody that I want under this law if I think they're going to harm me. Right? Under the law of the president today in Israel, I have the right to kill anybody I want that I don't like.
You don't even need evidence.
That's right. I
You
know.
believe in your heart. But you know
But
what's
if it's
just
good
a-
enough for them, then it's good enough for everybody to
just
do
a
it.
quick fact. All the right wing right now is saying, of course we have to go to war against Iran because don't you hear them chant death to America? Death to America. Let me educate you on death to
I
America.
don't think all the right wing is saying that now.
No,
but
but
some of them-
No, I'm just saying it's not all now.
But
It's
a lot
changing.
of people are. But let me educate you about this. 1979, when the Shah fell, the Iranian people woke up to the crimes that he had committed against them. Savak, their intelligence service, the torture, the murder. And it was done at the behest of the CIA. They captured the embassy and they took the documents out and they read the crimes. That's why they started saying death to America. America, the concept of a nation supporting a Shah who was torturing the people. I've been to Iran. And I can tell you right now, not a single Iranian said death to America to my face. They all shook my hand and said, why are you here? God bless you for being here. We love that you're here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having enough courage and humanity to come and talk to us. I said, well, what about death to America? And they said, you don't understand it. It's not death to you. It's not even death to your government. It's a slogan that is reflective of a period of time where we were frustrated with America, where you had done horrible things to us. They want peace with America.
Right. And what most people, most Americans need to understand is that in the 50s, America overthrew the government of Iran. They had an elected president by the name of Mohammad Mossadegh, and the U.S. overthrew him. And then the Shah came in, and then, the Ayatollahs came in. The U.S. set that in motion. And so now what we're saying, check this out, based on what, my friend Lindsey Graham said, he's saying, we'll get rid of the Ayatollahs and we're going to, and they'll have a democratic government. Well, they already had that. They had it, and we overturned
That
it.
was 1776 in reverse, overthrow a democracy to put a king back on the throne.
Exactly.
It's
That's the book.
extraordinary.
Yeah,
It's a
How could this be?
but this is the way of empire.
And America's spreading democracy around the world. That's
Yeah.
a perfect example. Salvador, Chile.
Yeah, yeah.
Allende.
Allende, Salvador Allende,
Yeah,
another one.
Nixon-
Spreading democracy.
Nixon authorized
But
that.
they get away with these
Dino
lies.
Che.
Hey,
The media helps
remember the book
insulate them.
Was a Racket?
Yeah.
By Smedley Butler?
Smedley Butler.
It's just been
It's
going
all
on
there
forever.
already. That's
Yeah.
right.
There's a book about
So anyway, talk about the Iranian conflict. This is one of my books, Trend Tracking, Far Better Than Megatrends. I told you how I started tracking trends during the Iranian crisis of 1979. and I'll use that as a simple model. That's how I became a trend forecaster. Just what you were saying. The Iranian crisis broke out. They taught us to hate the Iranians. And again, about the American people or anybody else, how many people ever heard of Mossadegh? Got overthrown in 1953 because he had the gall to say that oil, it's not Anglo-Iranian oil, better known today as BP. It's not ExxonMobil, better known today, or Standard Oil, better known today as ExxonMobil. It's the oil of the Iranian people. No, it's not.
That's right.
And the CIA and the MI6 overthrew Mossadegh. So when the revolution happened, like
Killed
you said,
him.
killed him. I don't think they
No.
killed Mossadegh.
No, they
They didn't kill
eventually,
Mossadegh.
he died in prison, but they didn't kill
They
him.
didn't kill him. They killed they killed tens of thousands of people, and they brought in the Savak, the secret police,
They killed
that made the SS
Allende,
look
they
good.
killed
Oh, that's what I was
Lumumba.
thinking,
Yeah,
Allende.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, when I'm going back, Scott, to mention this also, just like the people had no idea of when you talked to, nobody knew about Mossadegh. Nobody. I mean, when I say nobody, maybe 5% of the American public, 10%, maybe
You know,
15.
one day I was at the UN stakeout, security stakeout, John Bolton, who was the ambassador at the time. I asked him, if that didn't happen in 1953, if the US hadn't overthrown that, would we have 1979? Would you be standing here saying we have to put sanctions on the Iranian nuclear program? And he said, that's a question takes a long time to talk about. Can't answer it right here. I said, thank you.
Because he
very
hasn't
much."
answered it yet.
And for those out there,
Never would.
It's
So
starting-
I
you
would have
must
said,
ask.
you piece of shit.
Ah.
Yeah, all yours.
You know, I've been with right-wing Republican diplomats at the UN, but and usually they could be decent people.
Oh, he's an arrogant.
That
muffin.
guy
Oh, yeah,
is
he's bad.
a piece of garbage.
An arrogant
As well as
muffin.
being a right-wing lunatic.
And again, these arrogant guys couldn't fight the way out of a paper bag. That's the whole other thing about it. Can you imagine Lindsey Graham?
Oh,
Can you imagine a little clown boy in a fight?
wearing a dress? No, what did you say? Oh,
and for people who want to know about, particularly about the overthrow of Mohammed Mossadegh, there's a book called All the Shah's Men that
Wow.
tells everything about that, and you can understand exactly what happened then. And you know, I think something else that we have to take into account here, and that is, the truth is, we could talk about Trump, but the inertia was there. We were always going to end up here.
Yep.
We had a guy who soiled himself daily, and I don't really think he knew where he was for the last 4 years as president. They then ran someone who was so stupid, literally, she gave a discussion where she was talking about the cloud pointing up. Yes, our information is up in the cloud. She literally thought it was up in the clouds. So they ran her,
So did I.
and then we get Trump. And so the fact of the matter is, they put these people who are
It's one piece.
intellectually compromised, shall we say, in office, so that this machine can push them wherever they want to. So I think it is important. One of the things we're all talking about here, and that is, at some point, the American people have to, and we don't want it to happen in a bad way, they got to stand up and start stepping in. And unfortunately, they may be about to feel some serious economic
What are they
pain.
going to
Let's
do?
hope the
There's
only
nobody to
thing-
vote for.
There's nobody
Yeah,
to vote
Both
for.
parties are controlled by
Yep.
big money.
Yep.
Right? And I'm sorry to say, but Dennis's party gave us Trump because they have just dissed the average American. They don't care about that.
Nah.
They're an elitist Wall Street
not-
party, and
it's
they're
not even-
warmongers like the Republicans.
It's not even a party anymore.
Yeah.
It's a money
Trump
laundering
You
operation.
got it.
Trump
Perfectly said.
fooled, yeah,
Perfectly said.
he fooled the people that he was the champion of the working man. They were
Yep,
desperate.
that's
like I
right.
said, and he won.
You know, but you
So
you
tell
raised-
me, Dennis, you've been in Congress a long time. Is there any power? You know, there are people out there that think there's another power out there that's behind, making all these
Behind
decisions.
the throne, yeah.
What's your take?
Well, I mean, there are lobbies. APAC's a lobby.
Well,
They're
yeah.
influential with individual members of Congress, not necessarily Congress as a whole. We need to remember that a year ago, when Netanyahu appeared before the Congress, he got over 50 standing ovations.
Yep.
I mean, those standing ovations echoed around the world, and they're echoing right now. Are there
Is there a hidden
forces-
force? Is there a hidden force people think there's
well,
a hidden force?
you know
behind
what?
this?
Bilderbergs.
Oh, deep
Look,
state.
look,
You're trying to get
we
at.
can, is there a deep state? The deep state, as I've
Yeah,
always,
that's it. Yeah.
as I've always understood it, it's the lifers inside the government. It's the people in the think tanks. It's the people who have a vested interest in war with one country against another. I mean, they've been around a long time, and you know, it's just a fact of human nature. There's always going to be people. There's always going to be a dynamic tension between light and darkness, between war and peace, between prosperity and poverty. Those forces are always at work. The question is, what side do you stand on? What do you stand for? And in Congress, there are forces behind the scene, but elected members, this is what I've experienced, which is really surprising. It is mind-blowing how often members of Congress, who are supposed to represent, in some cases, they represent about 800,000 people, think they're powerless to change things. It's really the paradox of leadership, that you become a leader by virtue of your election, and you don't feel you can do anything about it. So people are silent. They're afraid to speak out. They're afraid to lose their office, for sure, because once you're in it, it's a good gig. But you know, this is why the American people cannot leave the government to its own designs. That people must be involved, on not just on the level of their votes. We need an active citizenry to save this country, because without that, the people who are running it from different places are simply about their own narrow needs and forget everybody else.
And that's why we need a third party.
Well, at
More than
least,
ever.
or third, fourth, fifth.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with a second at this point.
Yeah, hello. Ba-doom.
Yeah, I'd like to see Judge Napolitano run for president. That's
He's a good man.
Yeah.
You know, I want to bring an element up about wars generally and about American society specifically. You know, I've always wondered, about the connection between the violence the official violence, that state violence that we visit on other countries, and the violence at home. And in this society where, on this machine, we can track things going on all around the world.
Track you going around.
They can track you. Yeah. Hello. Ever tell you how much I love to see you? So anyhow, we don't really give enough credit to the fact that violence that occurs in our country is potentiated by the consciousness that's created by the violence that we visit in other places around the world. You can't tell me that this pulverization, this annihilation of the people of Gaza doesn't have an effect on people elsewhere, in a sense that it licenses brutality to other people, and it licenses an horrific type of response, of aggression. And I'm very concerned that we have created a culture where these thoughts are out there about murder and violence, like what happened in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I mean,
people are becoming inured.
The president today, the president was basically okaying the assassination of a leader of another country. What's the difference in terms of human consciousness between doing that and some guy walking up to a door and shooting, a representative? I mean, we have to realize that our thoughts, our words matter. They have impact. They make things happen in the physical world. What we think makes things happen. What we say makes things happen, and they drive deeds. And there isn't enough awareness of that people have to be conscious of the effect on consciousness of what we say. And that's why even invoking the possibility of a war sets into motion forces that could go beyond our control and likely will.
Scott, so what happened to that prohibition against the government assassinations that Gerald Ford signed after the Church Committee? Is it still in force?
No, we assassinated,
No, but it's still in the books. That's a law.
of course it is, but
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah, they don't
enforces
care
it.
about
Okay, that's what I was
Qasem
asking. It wasn't
Soleimani
ever
was
repealed.
assassinated.
Yeah.
The president of the United States just talked about assassinating Khamenei.
Here's what he said. Here's what Trump said. We know exactly where the so-called, quote, supreme leader is hiding.
Oh,
He is an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out and kill, at least not for now.
Let me say something, and I think.
I mean, this is a criminal act right there.
Literally,
It is.
It is a
Yeah,
criminal.
and this is
Yeah.
important for this
100%.
reason. A few weeks back, we were all talking about, and I don't think anybody was really sure 100% what happened, but President Putin was flying in the Kursk region,
Yep.
and a bunch of drones came towards him, and there were some who thought it was an assassination attempt. There were some who thought it may just be the drones in the region. We don't know. Could have been either one. But here's the bottom line. This is a country that has more nuclear weapons than we do, number one. And if you're the Russians and you're looking at this, you're thinking, well, I think I know that probably was an assassination attempt. That's number one. Number two, we still, for as terrible as this is, that's, my God, we still got this little thing going on in Ukraine against a country that has thousands of nuclear weapons. And at some point, we may need to talk to them. But what our president just did, and his people around him just did, is perfidy. What they just did says to the Russians, if Donald Trump says, all right, let's say we did, just for the sake of argument, we got this all smoothed over, we're done, now we'd like to talk to you. If you're the Russians, you're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I already know that if I talk to you, you're trying to get close to me so you can take that knife from behind your back and shiv me with it. Nobody, the Chinese, who in their right mind, and we are constantly confronting nuclear powers, who in their right mind
They're not in their right
would
mind.
have any thought of having any kind of negotiation with the United States right now.
No,
If
they
I'm the
don't.
Russians or the Chinese and they say, we want to talk about something, I'd say, yeah, you talk the way you talk to the Iranians, I don't think so.
Which is-
slam.
Why what's happening tomorrow is so very important, because our government doesn't know how to engage with other governments as humans to humans. And we are liars, we are cheaters, we commit perfidy. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., and you guys can watch this on YouTube at the @Celente YouTube channel. That's CELENTE at 2 p.m. We're going to go through an exercise. Leadership by example. We, the people of the United States of America, the 50 brave souls that are coming here, are going to speak with about 100 brave Russian souls in St. Petersburg. Just so you know, tomorrow is the opening day of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, the biggest forum in Russia. And this event is linked to it, meaning that this is an official event that follows that. Everybody in Russia is going to be watching
Wow.
this.
Wow.
So we have a
That's a big
chance.
deal, that-
It's a huge deal. We have a chance to show the Russian people that the Americans are human beings, that we can be talked to rationally, and we are capable of rational thought. That's the only chance we have, Garland, because if the Russian people, all they have as an example is Donald Trump or other American officials who lie, cheat, and steal, they'll never trust us. We have a chance to set an example that hopefully gets picked up on by other Americans around the country to carry out similar actions with their Russian counterparts, so that we, the people, teach our government by example how to treat other people with respect, with dignity as humans.
We need, again, Dennis has done it, and I do it, and you do it. I launched Occupy Peace over a decade ago. Where are the peace movements now? You mentioned about the people, the King protests last week. I went over there. They had several thousand people over here in Kingston against the King. And then one person was holding up a sign, Trump got draft deferments. He shouldn't be running our military.
Yeah.
So I said to somebody who was bragging about it, I said, how about putting up the sign, Biden shouldn't have run the military. He
Yeah.
got draft deferments too.
Yeah. And that was the end of the.
No, you know what it was?
No.
Well, Trump's son was in the military. I said, that has nothing to do with what the
Trump's
sign
son.
said. I mean, Biden's son, excuse me.
Yeah. But
Biden's son was in the military. I said, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about? But I'm showing you. And here's the other thing about people and not thinking. Here's what I'm hearing all the time. I got to write about this every day. And my heart's broken. I get very sad writing about the slaughter going on and on and on. But anyway, I start talking to people, and now they're saying, I can't watch this anymore. I'm tuning out. I can't take this anymore. I'm hearing that over and over and over and over again. And I'm talking about from people that have the money, that have the wherewithal to do anything that they want. I can't take it anymore. I don't want it. That's what's going on. They're tuning out. They're tuning out, and they're going to be controlled, and a lot of them.
You've got a good point there. I mean, I remember during the Vietnam War, you hear so much of the same thing every day, and people, when newspapers were popular, people would just turn the page and turn the page and turn the page, and not after a while they don't see it anymore because of information overload.
This is
this is where the real violence starts to come in.
People don't want to. They don't want to face the truth. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know. You guys know my Hind Rajab was a 6-year-old girl that was killed in Gaza by the Israelis.
Yeah.
She was killed on air live, talking to the Red Crescent, begging, come and help me, come and help me. The tanks are coming closer. She was in a car full of her dead relatives who had been slaughtered by the Israelis. And they sent 2 paramedics to rescue her, and the Israelis killed the paramedics as they killed Hind Rajab. She broke my heart. I mean, I'm a tough guy.
Yeah, of
And
course.
she broke. Do you want to know why I'm angry? Hind Rajab is why I'm angry. And every morning, I stopped looking at the bodies because my heart was
I'm
so
telling you, I
broken.
know.
And I have forced myself every morning to get up and look at the bodies. And it infuriates me. It breaks my heart. It breaks my spirit. But I have to do it.
I know.
Because if I don't do it, I forget what this is all about. This is about human beings.
But I'm trying
These
to
are
say-
my children. These
But
are your children. Everybody's children dying.
I know, but I know that, and it's all true, but I'm just telling you what people are doing.
No, I know. I'm saying that I was guilty of it too. For a while, I was so crushed by her death that I stopped looking at the bodies. And then I got challenged by Ray McGovern, who's a good friend. I think everybody here knows Ray. And Ray challenged me. He said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I've forgotten about the people of Palestine because it's too hard for me to think about
no,
it.
it's hard.
And I forced myself
It's
every
interesting
morning to do
talking
it.
about the protests.
And this is why I'm angry.
I was in Los Angeles on Saturday, covering the march to where this all began. And in September, I was in Glasgow in Scotland covering an immigration rally, and there was a counter rally as well. And more than half had Palestinian scarves and Palestinian flags. But in LA, I saw 2 people. I'm not saying there were only 2 people, but I saw one woman with a Palestinian flag and one guy holding a placard that said, fuck ICE, free Palestine. And that was it. So I know there aren't that many Arabs living in Palestinian or Arabs living in Southern California like there are in Northern England and Southern Scotland. But I was I thought there would have been more protests.
There are a lot of Iranians.
There are plenty of
A whole
Iranians, but
bunch of
they're kind of
Monarchists,
shock people.
yeah.
A lot of them, right? They support
But
shock.
people are scared now, though, because the government's coming after people.
Well, this is true.
Anti-Semitism
That's
is now labeled. I mean,
Yeah.
to say free Palestine is an anti-Semitic act,
Semitic.
and therefore anti-Semitism is a crime. And if you're not an American citizen, they can literally arrest you and
That's right.
deport
They're
you.
doing it.
I have to say something
crazy.
that a fear that I have, and I've told many people. My brother that was in the military passed away recently of prostate cancer,
Sorry.
but he was Jewish. He had converted to Judaism in the military.
Your brother.
Yeah, he was Jewish. He got converted to Judaism in the military, and we talked about this stuff. And I have this fear living in America, and the fear is a concern, whatever you want to call it, that what our government has done, what the empire has done, is conflated Zionism with Judaism.
Yeah.
If you're mad, if you say, literally, a Jewish person is out there saying, I'm protesting, and they're called an anti-Semitic, and a Christian person in favor of them, a Christian Zionist, is not anti-Semitic. A rabbi is anti-Semitic, but okay, here's my point. If, as we suspect, if they make this move and it goes bad, really, really, really bad, I have this fear that people in this country could literally turn on Jewish people, that there could be
they
that
are.
kind of violence.
That's why-
I have this fear
They've
that
conflated the
people,
two.
they've set it up.
It's not only
Judaism, Zionism. And then all of a sudden people are like, my gosh, I lost my job. Everybody's laid off. The economy's in collapse. Who's to blame? The ruling elite are going to say, well, certainly it's not us. No.
Well, again,
And they're going to point to someone. And I have a fear that all of this, you hear already people very, very angry at Israel.
Yeah.
They're blaming everything on Israel. Now, it's legitimate in some ways, but you got to look at the ruling elite. But you see where I'm going.
Of course.
And that can and
No,
will
it's
happen.
terrible. Colin Powell at a racism conference in 2000, I think it was in Berlin, was asked, is it anti-Semitic to criticize the Israeli government and policies? He said no. What happened to that?
Yeah.
That stupid new definition of anti-Semitism.
It's a setup.
Has conflated it. It's written in there, and now there was a bill. I don't know if
Yes.
that actually adopts that.
Okay, so, we're connecting the dots here. It's very important. So you start with the redefinition of what a Semite is. And people in Palestine are Semites.
right.
But you by excluding them from Semites, they're not in any way connected with Israel, and therefore you have people calling them animals, right? Then you have, this definition that starts to be used in policy, where they use it to go after college administrators when they're with protests. And they sanctioned administrators. They chased some college presidents of some pretty important colleges out, put the fear of God into them, intimidated them into, deer in the headlights testimony before Congress, went after student protesters, changing rules in college to threaten expulsion, to threaten, loss of their diploma or whatever.
And saying they won't get a job at any law firm after they get their degree.
Okay, so let's look at that, and that's part of the path of where we are right now.
You got it.
Yes.
Well said.
Because it was an attempt
Yep.
to preemptively squelch opposition. But guess what? It's like a pressure cooker. You put that lid on the pressure cooker and it keeps building and it's going to blow. So, those kids are out in their communities now, the college kids. But I have to tell you, I was shocked that the administration was able to pull off these sanctions of universities, and Harvard, of all places, finally stood up and said, look, mind your own business. This is a private university, and you're no one to tell us how to run it. But what they did, they aligned policy changes in the Human Rights Commission and other places to align with these new definitions. And suddenly, everyone who was fighting any kind of genocide or even bringing it home further, discrimination of any kind, they were suddenly on the outs. I mean, this whole thing is a setup. Our culture is being changed.
Again, it was a setup to even go into this Iran war. It started like
You're right.
that's like what you're saying. That's the beginning of that.
Yeah.
You get them into that platform. If you come out against it, you're an anti-Semite, on and on. And now this, by the way, I said, when they started negotiations with Iran, I said to Judge Napolitano, this is a farce. They're not going to have any negotiations at all. They're going to go play back and forth, just like they played back and forth with the so-called ceasefire resolutions with Israel. It was going to go nowhere. I said they're going to do the same exact thing with Iran. And last Tuesday, before I did my podcast, I do them Tuesday night when the new magazine comes out. I said they're going to attack Iran. An hour and a half later, they did.
Interesting. There's a notice here on X
Okay.
from Jackson Hinkle that President Trump has canceled his big announcement.
Ah, boy.
Tonight.
Great.
So
That'd
maybe,
be positive.
Well, maybe.
maybe
Hopefully.
maybe cooler heads are prevailing
Wow,
inside the
that'd be great.
administration.
Well,
He's
I'm
using
confident
this as
that
a
it's the-
negotiating tactic. He did it with Kim Jong.
It could be.
in North Korea. We're gonna bomb you and this and that, and then he went there and he met him and shook his hand.
They got nukes.
Yeah,
But I think
They
this
got
time,
nukes.
I
That's
think
why he did. That's the only
the chairman
reason.
of Joint Chiefs of Staff stood up and told him, Mr. President, if you do, see, there's a difference between politics and reality. Politics is about perception. Politics is about shaping perception. Reality is the guy with the gun who pulls the trigger and all. And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff did what he needs to do, which is to say, Mr. President, if you do this, this is what's going to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Okay, we're going to do this. They are going to do that. There's nothing we
Yeah.
can do to stop them from doing that. This is going to happen. This many bodies. Then you're going to ask me to do this. I don't have enough troops to do this.
Yeah.
So we will be impotent. They will continue to do that. And we will look weak. And we may actually trigger China, who says, hey, America's so weak right now, we'll make a decisive move on Taiwan. And we got Russia
They're
making a
not gonna
big
make
move.
more about Taiwan until Taiwan declares independence. That's the only way.
No, no,
China-
he was just saying that.
Yeah, yeah.
with the-
Yeah, that-
But
yeah,
you
the
you
potential.
told the judge the
Yeah.
other night they didn't need a false flag because Trump's on board, right? Didn't you say that?
They don't need a false.
Yeah, but
Trump
now,
isn't a false
yeah, but if he doesn't go, then Gerald's right. They may have to do something.
Well, we need to talk about
Right?
China here before we close this out.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes left.
Because it's very clear that China understands that if Iran falls,
Yes.
that China is next.
Yeah.
It's a-
Wow.
It's a
Yeah.
path towards China. It's their energy. It's really a beachhead
Yep,
for the West.
that's
And,
important.
and I think, and this is why you hear the stories about China sending weapons through Pakistan into Iran right now. And so China, and this is something maybe that is being discussed from a consequence standpoint. If we get into this and China comes on the side of Iran fully, that is something that we don't even understand. I mean, you have to remember something from history. During the Korean War, China basically came across the Yalu and routed U.S. troops,
Except the first Marine Division.
except the first Marine Division, Semper Fi. So, but there are real consequences here. China has weapons, nuclear weapons too. So, there's maybe this exercise, not just here, but maybe in the White House, is causing some reality testing, as you put it, about what the limits are of power. But if despite all those warnings, the flashing yellow lights and the flashing red lights, there is an attempt to go ahead.
Well, Iran, and that's Russia's back door right there too, and the Baltics and all. And so bottom line is this, realistically, Russia and China can't let Iran fall.
No, it's
They
it's
can't
essentially
let
the
it fall.
BRICS.
And if it gets to a certain point, they would have to act. They cannot allow that to happen.
The-
And they will not allow it to happen.
The North-South Economic Corridor is an essential part of Russia's domestic economic strategy going forward. China just sent a train, the new Silk Road from
Yep.
Western China to Tehran. That's an essential element. Eurasia is to be developed by this, and Iran is the linchpin. They are not going to let Iran fall.
Nope.
And I mean, they're not going to go to war to do this, but they don't need to. I agree with you. China has said, we aren't going to act until Taiwan declares, except for the following. China, in the South China Sea right now, first of all, understand that the Nimitz, which is the carrier battle group that's supposed to be flexing U.S. muscle in the South China Sea, has been diverted to the Middle East. Right. All right. If China needs to, they will do what they need to do in the South China Sea.
Yeah, I agree.
To assert themselves militarily, to say this is done. They will slap the Philippines like they haven't been slapped in a long time, and they will tell everybody else, we're here to stay, stop playing games with them. And if them want to continue to do this, then they'll turn to the Taiwanese and say, you got a choice. Peaceful integration now, or we're coming across, because they're all over there, and ain't no one coming to help you.
Yep.
And then what are we going to do? Not a damn thing, because we can't.
And
And
why
this is
should
what-
we?
well,
That's the thing. Why
Well,
the hell should I? What the hell
because-
do I care about this?
But because they've been given orders.
This shit's been going on between how many? Well, the Ming Dynasty was part of China. Hey, there was a guy by the name of George Washington, a real guy that fought, not like these little guys that never fought. And what does he tell the American people? That basically this stuff has been going on for for hundreds of thousands of years. It's not our interest to get involved in it.
But
Support America. I'm not an isolationist. I like to travel the world. It's not my fight. I'm not going to solve this problem. This crap's been going on for thousands of years.
but the other thing the Chinese can do is sanction the hell out of us.
But I'm just saying, why should we even be involved
Well,
in
they
this?
can just, they can just say, they can just say, we're
I'm
not
just saying,
selling
but why should
anything.
we get
They can
involved?
just
It's
say,
not
well,
that
No,
we
I-
can tackle
but I
it.
agree with
Okay,
you,
we're not
but
selling
we're
anything.
involved because
Yeah, if
a national security strategy of the United States promulgated by the Department of Defense at the direction of the President of the United States, approved by Congress, said
Yeah.
that's our job.
It's
Until
not,
we
yeah,
change
that's
that
what I'm saying.
paper,
That's the bullshit.
Well, but you can't change math. And the math is China has over 2 million soldiers, a standing army of over
Yeah.
2 million. We have 1.3. You throw in the reserves, it goes more, but it will take 2 million to invade Iran. I mean, the math doesn't work here in
No,
any
no,
way.
no.
I'll give you another
None
math.
of it.
Yeah.
I'll give you another math. Iran has 10,000 missiles, and they're busting Israel like it's never. Tonight, Israel just got slaughtered.
What
I
is,
just wanna say
what's
that.
anything new about the,
Trump said he's not going to talk, but Israel's getting
no, no, see
slaughtered.
what's going on with
But-
Israel? Anything?
But
Yeah, look, go ahead.
Yeah.
China
what
has
analysis or something?
50 to 100,000 missiles.
Times of Israel.
We don't have enough missile defense. Taiwan will be wiped off the face of the earth with a sustained ballistic missile barrage that we can't defend against. This is math.
Yeah, before we go, I just want
Okay.
to, I just want to, do kind of a buzzer shot here. We need to have compassion for the people of Israel because they're being put in a position by the Zionism that they're pitted against the world and they could be destroyed. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
They won't let
there's a
them
lot
leave.
of loss of
They
lives
won't let them leave.
based on a particular type of government which believes in ethnic cleansing and genocide and living space or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so,
That's ironic.
Even strong, I
Thank
think
you.
It's
You
ironic.
got it. But you know what? Israel is not a monolith. Yes, there is unfortunately a consensus about Gaza, but there's not a consensus about the government in Israel
Yeah.
by any means.
No.
So, I just want to say that, we have to have some compassion here for the people in Israel because they're getting hit
Yeah.
right now as a result of their government's arrogance.
Yep.
And their perfidy.
And we've got to remember, I think they just slaughtered another 60, they used bait, like another 60 Palestinians.
Every day.
They put food out,
And
and then when they come to get the food, they slaughtered 60 and wounded 300. They just put bait out, come get the food by some group, some humanitarian organization that's literally run by the Mossad. It's clear what they're doing. And that's the other part of it. We're focused on Iran and our fears and all that. And meanwhile, they're
This
just
is going on.
starving and slaughtering people. Literally, you put people in a box, you close the doors, say no food and water comes in, nothing comes in, and we're just going to throw bombs in day and night. It is the most evil, horrific thing that human
Which is-
beings can even do.
Which is why tomorrow we're holding a citizens summit to train people how to be humans, to treat other people as humans, to speak to people with respect, even though the cultures may be different, the languages are different. That's what's so important tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please tune in. Gerald Celente's YouTube channel at Celente, Celente, and help us help you. And that's from Jerry Maguire. Help me help you. Help us help each other.
Yep.
Let's all work together to recapture this human spirit that we all have. Gerald, I want to thank you very much for allowing this event to take place
yeah,
here.
no, I'm happy to.
I
do
yelled
it.
at you because you and I are fighters.
Well, I yelled back.
You yelled right back at me. But we love each other and we love the cause that we're fighting for. It's a cause for peace. Joe, Garland,
Yeah, thank
Dennis.
you all. Yeah.
I mean, this is amazing, people. This is what it's about. This is the America that I love. And so thank you very much for putting this on and helping us out.
There we go.
Hey,
All right, here we are.
All right, that's what we do.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern time, live. So be there.
You know what happened? They were watching this in the Situation Room, and they're like, those guys make a lot of